Greetings, men of 222. It's great to be with you today. If things go right, I'm actually back in Columbus at this point, but I'm at an alternate, what's it called? Advanced Leadership Training class with Pastor Bo. But I'll be really looking forward to being back with you next week. Today's topic is one of the most critical topics that we'll discuss as men anytime, anywhere, and that is rejects passivity. It's in that line of initiative which we talked about, which is being proactive, being a member of the elite force, being a teacher, being enthusiastic, being an encourager. And today we're going to talk about rejecting passivity. But what is passivity? We talk about it all the time, but we don't really define it often. So it is an acceptance of what happens without active response or resistance. It is an acceptance of what happens without an active response or resistance. So when I refer to passivity, it's primarily a reference to the fact that we know something is wrong, but we don't resist it or respond to it. And here's a key word. We're going to talk about this. Appropriately. Respond to it appropriately. This is more than James 4:7, by the way, which says, "Therefore, to one who knows the right thing to do and does not do it, to him it is sin." No, this is far more than that. This is standing up to someone or something when we're being asked to violate a principle of God. When we know what we're being asked to do is wrong and we don't do anything about it. For example, if someone asks us to lie for them, we should not do it. People do that all the time. If our wives or daughters dress inappropriately, we should lead our homes well and say, no, don't wear that. Frankly, it's hard to say no to your wife or your daughters because they may pout. No guy likes that. They may scream, then they may even make you pay another type of price. But the bottom line is, it's at times like this that you have to decide what is right, obedience to God or caving into emotion. Now, that may be in a sense where you don't stand up and say to someone, that's incorrect behavior. But there's even more to this lesson today. Please don't misunderstand me, by the way. This is hard stuff. Your head is saying to you while you're saying no, your head is saying, is it really that important? Maybe I should give in on that. Or am I right in my opinion? What if I'm wrong? Or am I really representing God correctly? See, sometimes I've spoken with people before and they say to me, well, does this mean I should get in a fist fight all the time? And it's clear that no, the answer to that is sometimes it takes a great deal more courage to walk away from a fight than it does to get into a fight. What we don't, when we don't lead as we should, we know, here's one of the byproducts of that. We hate ourselves a little more every day. I mean this seriously. When you and I don't behave, don't lead in a way that we know is right, it begins to gnaw away at us. You're not the man you should be. You're not the man you ought to be. And you actually start to dislike yourself over that. So we filled what I call the garbage bag with frustrations, right? You let something go and you remember that, but you put it kind of in this bag and you put it in this bag, this garbage bag, and you put it with the frustrations that you feel. And then someday your wife says some little thing or your child does, and you get out that garbage bag and you whack them over the head with that thing, figuratively, obviously. You whack them over the head with that thing. And they're kind of going to themselves, well, it wasn't that big a deal. And of course it wasn't, but you've got all this built up garbage over here in this bag. And today it really set you off and you went nuts. By the way, women do that also. But if you want to have a healthy marriage, you need to, as my mother used to say, keep short accounts. Deal with things as they happen. Biblically, you think that's in there? Sure. Look at Ephesians 4:26. It tells us, be angry, yet do not sin. Do not let the sun go down on your anger. Now, don't tell me that Jesus was never angry. He certainly was in the temple. So the Word of God says that you can be angry, that in and of itself is not a sin. But it's very close to one, and you can't step over that line. But here's the key for marriages. Do not let the sun go down on your anger. Deal with stuff. Now, man's history of passivity goes all the way back to Genesis 3 and 6. Remember that? When the woman saw that the tree was good for food, that it was a delight to the eyes, and that the tree was desirable to make one wise, she took from its fruit and she ate. And then she gave also to her husband, watch this, and he ate, who was with her. Gave also to her husband with her, and he ate. Notice Adam was right there the whole time, and then he ate. He was probably, as I said, there the whole time, even while the serpent was going through all that Mickey Mouse stuff he was giving at Eve. His job, Adam's job, was to protect Eve, and he didn't do it. And that's why, by the way, that is why, of course, it was because Adam was born first, but also because it was to Adam that God gave the message, and it was Adam's responsibility to make sure that it was carried through on. Don't eat from that tree. To make matters worse, by the way, Adam ducked his responsibility. In Genesis 3, 9 through 12, he says, the Lord called to the man and said to him, where are you? And he said, I heard the sound of you in the garden, and I was afraid. This is Adam. I was afraid because I was naked, so I hid myself. And God said, who told you that you were naked? Have you eaten from the tree of which I commanded you not to eat? And the man said, the woman whom you gave me to be with me, she gave me from the tree and I ate. It was her fault. Not my fault. It was her fault. Well, not being much of a man of responsibility, is he? Unfortunately, this is not the only example of biblical men failing to reject passivity. What about the time in Genesis 12, 11 through 13, when Abraham and Sarah were going into a far country, and Abraham said to her, hey, tell them you're my sister, not my wife, because if they really like you, they'll probably kill me and keep you. Boy, that's not exactly standing up, is it? And Abraham then went in, and in Genesis 16 and 2, we read about the fact that Abraham went into Sarah's handmaid. Now, granted, it was Sarah. This is complicated, but Sarah said, go into my handmaid and have sex because we can't have a kid. So it doesn't necessarily mean that Adam thought the whole thing up, but he went through with it, and he knew that God had said to him, no, it will be you and Sarah who will have a child. But Adam went into her anyway. Very passive. Peter denied Jesus 3 times. Of course, that's very passive. Now, not being passive, by the way, is hard. But when we are passive, look at the mess that we make if we don't follow God's plan. Now, we have biblical examples where men weren't passive, but they overreacted. And this is probably the most different thing about this lesson that I've ever taught. I want to really make sure you understand here. Passivity, rejecting passivity, is not simply a call to do something. No, it has to be some appropriate thing. And here are some examples of men who weren't passive, but they overreacted. They were bold, but they were bold without integrity. Look at 2 Samuel 11, where David commits adultery with Bathsheba, and then to make things worse, he has Uriah killed. Well, he wasn't passive about his sin, but he overreacted. He was bold, but there was no integrity in the way that he reacted. Remember how Moses overreacted when he killed the overseer? Exodus 2, 11 and 12 says this, now it came about in those days when Moses had grown up that he went out to his brethren, the Jews, the Israelites, looked on their hard labors, and he saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew, one of Moses' brethren. So he looked this way and that, and when he saw that there was no one around, he struck down the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. Well, Moses wasn't passive about the fact that the man had beaten the guy inappropriately, but Moses' actions were inappropriate. You see, it's not enough just to act. You have to act appropriately. And let's go back just for a second here. Remember what passivity is? It's acceptance of what happens without active response or resistance. But I'm adding something that is critical here today, which is you can respond, but it needs to be appropriately. Now, the good news is that there are some stirring examples of men making God proud. Look at Daniel 1:8, when he was offered food that had been sacrificed to idols, probably certainly outside the Jewish dietary laws. And in Daniel 1:8, he said, Daniel purposed in his heart not to defile himself. Man, that's incredible. Daniel 3:16 through 18, about Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, when they replied to Nebuchadnezzar and they said, hey, we do not need to give you an answer concerning the fact that we'll bow down to this idol, because we're not going to. If it be so, our God whom we serve is able to deliver us from the furnace of blazing fire. And he will deliver us out of your hand, O king. But even if he does not, let it be known to you, O king, that we're not going to serve your gods or worship the golden image that you have set up. Man, that is great, isn't it? That is a beautiful picture of rejecting passivity in an appropriate way. Now look, Peter. We talked about Peter failing, right? But look at Peter's comeback in Acts 5, 28 through 32, saying that the people told John and Peter not to share the gospel. And they kept doing it. And so these people came back and said, we gave you strict orders not to continue teaching in this name. And yet you have filled Jerusalem with your teaching and intend to bring this man's blood upon us. They knew it was their fault anyway. But Peter and the apostles answered, we must obey God rather than men. One of the greatest verses in the Bible, Acts 5:29. We must obey God rather than men. The God of our fathers raised up Jesus, whom you had put to death by hanging him on a cross. And he is the one whom God exalted to the right hand as a prince and savior, to grant repentance to Israel and forgiveness of sins. And we are witnesses of these things. So is the Holy Spirit, whom God has given to those who obey him. Hopefully that's you and I, guys, right? I could also cite Phineas, Caleb, give me that mountain, Joshua, taking Jericho, and others. But you can see the point. We can choose to either obey or disobey. We can choose to be passive or bold, but with integrity. A real man rejects passivity. A real man rejects boldness without integrity. As I've been hiking in the Arizona deserts, I've found that to find your way, it is often important to look ahead. It's interesting, the paths kind of disappear under your feet, but if you look ahead, you can see where another path comes, and that's what you do. So if you only look 6 feet around you, you often miss the path ahead of you. But the writer of Hebrews makes that very point when he says it this way, therefore, since you have so great a cloud of witnesses surrounding us, let us lay aside every encumbrance and the sin which so easily entangles us, and let us run with endurance the race that is set before us. What? Fixing our eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter of faith, who, for the joy set before him, wow, joy, set before him, endured the cross, despising the shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. Hebrews 12, 1 and 2. We not only make decisions for ourselves when we teach the next generation how to make decisions, whether to be passive or not. Robert E. Lee said this. Robert E. Lee was a strong Christian. He was on the wrong side of history, but he was a strong Christian. And he said this, he said, after a few minutes, he was talking about his son, and after a few minutes, Lee looked back and found that his son was behind him, imitating his every move and walking in the tracks the father had made in the snow. He said, when I saw this, he said to his friend, It behooves me to walk very straight when this fellow is already following in my tracks. You and I need to do that very thing. So the takeaways for this week are: don't let the sun go down on your anger. Address your issues in a timely fashion. 2, Adam was present, but he was not engaged, and he missed his chance to prevent a problem. Daniel, number 3, was ready when the time came to step up. Why? Because he had decided how to behave in advance. He was committed. And if you have failed by being passive before, learn from your mistakes and do better the next time. There will be a next time if you continue to live. Stay focused on Jesus, the author and perfecter of your faith. Hey, see you next Saturday. Lord willing, and the creeks don't rise. Be intentional this week and honor Jesus.